The wind howled across the frozen wasteland, carrying ice crystals that stung like microscopic daggers against any exposed skin. Daniel Storm adjusted his thermal mask, checking the readings on his wrist computer for the fifth time in as many minutes. The temperature had dropped another 3 degrees, pushing the limits of even his advanced cold weather gear. "Just my luck," he muttered, his words disappearing into the howling gale. 5 years of searching, and I find the temple entrance during the worst storm of the season. The structure before him jutted from the ice like a geometric wound in the landscape, all sharp angles and impossible symmetry. Its surface gleamed with an iridescent sheen that shouldn't have been possible after thousands of years of exposure to the elements. Daniel ran his gloved hand along the wall, feeling the subtle vibration beneath his fingers. Even now, something in the structure remained active. His scanner beeped insistently, drawing his attention to a pattern of swirling symbols etched into the ice. They matched the fragments he'd discovered in other Ale ruins, but these were perfectly preserved. Daniel activated his holorecorder, watching as the blue light swept across the ancient text. "Field log, day 1825, he spoke clearly into his recorder. "I've finally located what appears to be the Temple of Eternal Frost, mentioned in the Ale Chronicles. The architecture matches their distinctive style, but the preservation is unprecedented. The material appears to be some form of self-repairing composite that..." A deep rumble cut through his commentary. The ground beneath his feet shifted, and for a heart-stopping moment, Daniel thought the ice shelf was breaking apart. Instead, a seam appeared in the temple wall, spreading like a crack in glass before splitting open to reveal a dark passage. "Well," he said, checking his oxygen levels, "that's new." The passage descended at a steep angle, its walls lined with the same iridescent material as the exterior. Daniel's boots found purchase on steps that seemed to absorb the ice rather than accumulate it. His headlamp cast dancing shadows across the crystalline surfaces, creating the unsettling impression that the walls themselves were moving. After what felt like an eternity of descent, the passage opened into a vast chamber. Daniel's headlamp barely penetrated the darkness, but his sensors indicated the room extended at least 50 meters in all directions. The air was notably warmer here, still well below freezing, but manageable enough that he could lower his thermal protection slightly. "This is impossible," he breathed, watching his instruments. "There's an energy signature coming from somewhere in here. After all this time..." He moved carefully through the chamber, mapping its dimensions. The floor was perfectly level, made of the same material as the walls, but with intricate patterns that seemed to shift under his feet. At the center of the room, a pillar of pure light rose from floor to ceiling. Daniel approached it slowly, his scientific caution warring with his burning curiosity. Within the light, suspended like an insect in amber, floated a woman. Her violet skin seemed to pulse with its own inner luminescence, and her features were locked in an expression of serene beauty. Elaborate jewelry adorned her form, suggesting high status among the Ale. "Incredible," he whispered, circling the pillar. "A perfect preservation chamber. But why? Who was she?" His scanner began to chirp urgently. The energy readings were spiking, and the light within the pillar began to pulse in rhythm with the sound. Daniel stepped back, but his boot caught on an raised section of flooring. He stumbled, his hand brushing against the pillar's surface. The chamber erupted with light. Warning symbols flashed across his visor as ancient machinery hummed to life around him. The pillar's glow intensified until he had to shield his eyes, and then, as suddenly as it began, everything went quiet. When Daniel lowered his arm, the woman was standing before him, very much alive. Her violet skin shimmed in the chamber's dim light, and her eyes, a startling silver, fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You've chosen to awaken me," she said in perfect standard, her voice carrying both authority and amusement. "For the ritual of reunion, I assume." "Rather bold of you." Daniel took an involuntary step backward. "I... what? No, I'm an archaeologist. This was an accident. I didn't mean to..." She moved toward him with fluid grace, her traditional garments flowing like liquid metal. "An accident? Oh, my dear boy, nothing about this was accidental. The stasis field responds only to those with..." She paused, running a finger along his chest plate. Compatible attributes. Compatible? Daniel managed, trying to maintain his professional demeanor despite her proximity. I don't understand. Who are you? I am Lyra, High Priestess of the Eternal Frost, she said, circling him with predatory elegance. And you are far more interesting than the usual warriors and priests who sought to wake me. An archaeologist, you said. How charmingly academic. Daniel forced himself to focus on his scanner readings, rather than her mesmerizing movement. The energy signature is incredible. Some kind of quantum suspension technology? The power requirements alone would be... Lyra's laugh echoed through the chamber. Already trying to reduce mystery to mechanics? Your kind never changes. She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns swirling beneath her violet skin. But you should know, Daniel Storm, that awakening a priestess carries certain obligations. He started at the use of his name. How did you? The same way I know your heart rate is elevated, your pupils are dilated, and your mind is racing between scientific curiosity and something far more primal. Her smile held secrets. The connection began the moment you touched the stasis field. Connection? Daniel took another step back, his scientific mind racing. Some form of telepathic technology? So determined to classify everything, Lyra sighed, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. Very well, let me speak in terms you might better appreciate. My awakening has initiated a protocol. This protocol requires a specific type of interaction between awakener and awakened. Failure to complete this protocol properly will result in the release of what your translations call the Ice Titan, though that term hardly does justice to what sleeps beneath us. Daniel's scanner suddenly screamed with alerts. The floor beneath them trembled, and deep within the ice, something shifted. You see, Lyra said calmly, already it stirs. The ritual must be completed, or everything within 1,000 kilometers will be destroyed when it fully wakes. Wait, Daniel held up his hands. Are you saying we have to? What exactly does this ritual entail? Lyra's smile turned predatory. Nothing so crude as what you're imagining, though I'm flattered by where your mind went first. She glided closer, and despite himself, Daniel remained rooted to the spot. The ritual requires emotional and spiritual synchronization, a meeting of minds, if you will, though physical proximity certainly helps. Another tremor shook the chamber. Daniel struggled to process everything while maintaining his scientific objectivity. And if I refuse? Then the Titan wakes, and we all die. She shrugged elegantly. I've participated in this ritual dozens of times over the centuries. Some candidates were more enthusiastic than others, though I must say, none of them approached it with quite your analytical intensity. Dozens of times? Daniel felt an unexpected spike of something that definitely wasn't scientific curiosity. How many exactly? Lyra's smile widened. Oh my, was that jealousy I sensed? How fascinating. The others were quite different, you know. Warriors mostly, all swagger and bravado. A few priests, too formal by half. But you... She traced a pattern in the air between them, and Daniel felt a tingling sensation follow her finger's path across his chest. You're something new entirely. The chamber shook again, more violently this time. Ice crystals rained from the ceiling, and the walls groaned with stressed metal sounds. Time grows short, Lyra said, her playful demeanor sobering slightly. Will you participate in the ritual willingly? I should warn you, resistance only makes the process more intense. Daniel looked at his scanner, at the incredible readings it was collecting, then at the otherworldly woman before him. His scientific training screamed that this was too convenient, too fantastic to be real. But the tremors beneath his feet felt real enough, and the way his skin tingled in her presence defied any rational explanation. I don't suppose you'd be willing to explain the theoretical framework behind this ritual first? He asked, already knowing the answer. Lyra laughed, the sound like crystal wind chimes. Oh, you are delightful. But no, some things must be experienced to be understood. She held out her hand, her violet skin seeming to pulse with inner light. Shall we begin? Daniel took a deep breath, then reached for her hand. For science, he said firmly. Of course, Lyra agreed, her fingers intertwining with his. For science. The moment their hands touched, the chamber erupted with light, and Daniel felt his world tilt sideways. The last thing he heard before reality shifted was Lyra's amused whisper. This is going to be so much fun. The moment their hands connected, a surge of energy coursed through Daniel's body. His scientific instruments went haywire, screens flickering with impossible readings before shutting down completely. The sensation was like static electricity mixed with the warmth of sunlight, spreading from his fingertips up his arm. Fascinating reaction, Lyra purred, stepping closer. Most simply experience the initial shock, but you're actually trying to analyze it, aren't you? Daniel struggled to maintain his professional composure. The energy transfer appears to be creating some kind of neural bridge. Is it some form of quantum entanglement? Always with the questions. Lyra's free hand traced up his arm, leaving trails of tingling sensation even through his thermal suit. Tell me, do you analyze everything this intensely, or am I just special? The chamber trembled again, but Daniel barely noticed. His attention was caught by the way patterns of light seemed to dance beneath Lyra's violet skin, creating mesmerizing swirls that matched his pulse. The biological implications alone are incredible, he managed, his voice slightly hoarse. Your cellular structure must be… Daniel, Lyra interrupted, pressing a finger to his lips. You're thinking too much. The ritual requires feeling, not analysis. He caught her wrist gently, moving her finger away from his mouth. And how exactly am I supposed to stop thinking when you're literally defying every law of physics I know? Her smile turned mischievous. Perhaps you need a distraction? Before he could respond, she spun them both around, pressing him against one of the crystalline walls. The cold should have been intense, but instead, he felt only warmth radiating from where their bodies connected. This is highly unprofessional, he protested weakly. Says the man whose heart rate just doubled, she teased. Your body seems quite professional at responding to stimuli. Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger than before. Crystals rained down from the ceiling, forcing Daniel to pull Lyra closer protectively. She fit against him perfectly, and he could have sworn he heard her make a sound of satisfaction. The Titan grows restless, she murmured against his chest. We really should focus on the ritual. You're the one who keeps distracting me, Daniel pointed out, trying to ignore how right she felt in his arms. Lyra looked up at him, silver eyes dancing with amusement. Am I? And here I thought I was helping you focus on something other than your precious scientific method. You're enjoying this far too much. Guilty as charged. She shifted slightly, causing another wave of tingling energy to course through them both. Though I must admit, your resistance is far more entertaining than the usual immediate surrender to the process. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Now who's analyzing whom? Her laughter echoed through the chamber, somehow both melodic and slightly wicked. Touché, my curious scientist. But tell me truthfully, are you resisting because you're afraid of the unknown, or because you're afraid you might enjoy it too much? The question hit uncomfortably close to home, and Daniel felt his carefully maintained professional distance cracking. Both, he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. Finally, Lyra breathed, a real answer. She raised her free hand to his face, her touch sending sparks of sensation across his skin. Now, shall we discover what other truths we can unlock together? The chamber shuddered around them, but Daniel barely noticed. He was too caught up in the way Lyra's violet skin seemed to glow from within, how her silver eyes held both ancient wisdom and playful invitation. His scientific mind was still racing, trying to categorize and analyze every sensation, but for the first time in his career, he found himself wanting to simply experience the moment rather than study it. Well, Lyra prompted, her voice soft but challenging. What's it going to be, Dr. Storm? Science or sensation? Daniel made his decision. How about both? He said, and pulled her closer. Her smile was radiant. Now that, she whispered, is the correct answer. The temple's crystals began to pulse with light, matching the rhythm of their synchronized heartbeats, as the ritual truly began. The energy pulsed between them, creating a luminescent web of light that danced across their intertwined forms. Daniel felt his scientific reservations melting away with each passing moment, replaced by an intoxicating awareness of Lyra's presence. "You know," Lyra murmured, tracing patterns on his chest that left trails of silvery light. "There's something I haven't told you about the ritual yet." Daniel found himself smiling, despite the situation. "Let me guess. More ancient and complicated protocols?" "Actually," she looked up at him through lidded silver eyes, "the ritual's true name translates to the binding of eternal partners, or in your simpler terms." She paused for effect, clearly enjoying the moment. "Marriage." Daniel blinked, but surprisingly found himself more amused than alarmed. "So I accidentally proposed by touching your stasis field. Most men would consider themselves lucky," she teased, her violet skin shimmering. "How many can say they're engaged to a priestess of an advanced civilization?" "Most men haven't spent 5 years freezing on an ice planet looking for said civilization," he countered, but his tone was light. The tension that had kept his shoulders rigid began to ease. Lyra noticed the change in his posture and smiled approvingly. "Finally relaxing, my unexpected suitor?" "Well," he said, allowing his hands to settle more comfortably on her waist, "I suppose there are worse ways to end an expedition than accidentally marrying the most fascinating woman I've ever met." "Fascinating, am I?" She pressed closer, her body fitting perfectly against his. "Not just an interesting scientific specimen?" "Oh, you're definitely that too," he admitted. "But I'm starting to think some mysteries are better experienced than explained." The chamber rumbled again, but this time the vibrations felt less threatening and more like a distant purr. Lyra's eyes lit up with approval. "Now that," she said, "sounds like a man ready to embrace his destiny rather than analyze it." "Don't get too excited," Daniel warned, though his smile betrayed him. "I still have about 1,000 questions about your technology." "Of course you do," she laughed, the sound like crystal chimes. "But perhaps we can negotiate a deal. One answer for every proper kiss?" Daniel felt his pulse quicken at her suggestion. "That seems like a rather unorthodox research methodology." Says the man who accidentally acquired an alien wife while doing field research. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. "Besides, isn't hands-on experience the best way to study something thoroughly?" He couldn't help but laugh at her logic. "You know, for someone who's been frozen for thousands of years, you're remarkably good at this." "At what? Flirting?" Her silver eyes sparkled with mischief. "Or driving methodical scientists to distraction?" "Both," he admitted, finding himself drawn closer to her. The energy between them hummed with increasing intensity. "Well then," she whispered, her lips tantalizingly close to his, "perhaps it's time for your first lesson in ancient ale customs, starting with how we seal our marriage bonds." The last of Daniel's scientific restraint melted away as he closed the distance between them. After all, he reasoned, what kind of researcher would he be if he didn't thoroughly investigate every aspect of this fascinating cultural exchange? The temple's crystals pulsed with approving light as their lips met, and somewhere far below, the ice titans settled back into peaceful slumber, satisfied that the ritual was proceeding exactly as it should. The kiss ended, leaving trails of luminescent energy dancing between them. Daniel found himself captivated by the way the light played across Lyra's violet skin, creating patterns that seemed to tell their own stories. "So," he said, keeping her close, "am I now officially married to a priestess of a civilization I've spent years studying?" Lyra traced a finger along his collar, leaving a trail of tingling sensation. "Curious about your new wife's history, are you? Most men would be more interested in the present moment." "Most men haven't dedicated their lives to understanding the ale," he countered, then added with a small smile, "though I admit, the present moment is rather distracting." "The ale," she said, her silver eyes growing distant with memory while maintaining their playful glint. "We were the shapers of worlds, the masters of matter and energy. This planet was once a paradise of our making, before the great catastrophe." "What happened?" Daniel asked, genuinely fascinated both by her words and the way her expressions shifted with ancient memories. "We grew too ambitious," she said, her hands absently creating patterns of light in the air between them. "We sought to harness the power of stars themselves. The resulting cascade nearly destroyed everything. She paused, looking up at him with a mixture of mischief and sadness. Rather puts your marriage proposal in perspective, doesn't it? I still maintain that was an accident, he protested weakly, though his arms tightened around her. Keep telling yourself that, she teased. But as I was saying, when we realized we couldn't stop the cascade, we created sanctuaries like this one. The most gifted of our people were placed in stasis, waiting for a time when the universe might need us again. Her smile turned sultry. Though I must admit, being awakened by a handsome scientist wasn't exactly what I expected. Handsome, am I? Daniel couldn't help but grin. I thought I was just an interesting specimen. Oh, you're definitely that too, she purred, pressing closer. But you've proven to be so much more entertaining than expected. The chamber hummed with energy around them as she continued. The stasis crystals were designed to preserve us indefinitely, but they needed specific conditions to activate. Emotional resonance, genetic compatibility. She traced his jawline, physical attraction. Are you saying your technology basically works on romance? Oversimplifying as usual, she chided playfully. But essentially, yes. The crystals needed someone who could not only understand our legacy, but also form a genuine connection with the preserved individual. Her silver eyes sparkled. Congratulations on meeting all the criteria. And the marriage aspect? Insurance, she said with a wicked smile. We couldn't have just anyone waking up ancient priestesses, could we? The ritual ensures that whoever awakens us is committed to more than just scientific curiosity. Daniel processed this information, aware of how her proximity was making it increasingly difficult to think clearly. So you've been waiting all this time for someone like you, she finished, her violet skin glowing brighter. Someone who combines intelligence with passion, curiosity with caring. She leaned closer, her breath tickling his ear. Though I must say, your resistance to my charms is both amusing and futile. Is that so? He managed, trying to maintain some semblance of professional dignity, even as his pulse raced. Absolutely, she whispered. You've already proven yourself worthy by awakening me. Now you're just postponing the inevitable. And what's that? Accepting that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from surrendering to the unknown. Her lips brushed his neck, sending sparks of energy through his body. Care to test that hypothesis, Dr. Storm? The last of his scientific restraint crumbled as he pulled her into another kiss, the temple's crystals pulsing with approval around them. After all, he reasoned, what better way to study an ancient civilization than through such thorough research? As they parted, Lyra's silver eyes danced with triumph and affection. See? Some experiments are better conducted without all that analytical distance. I suppose, he admitted, in the interest of cultural exchange, further study is required. Oh, my dear scientist, she laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber like music. We've only just begun the first lesson. The temple hummed with ancient power as its priestess and her chosen partner continued their unique form of archaeological research, proving that some mysteries of the universe were indeed better experienced than explained. Hours later, Daniel sat cross-legged on the temple floor, surrounded by holographic displays from his research equipment. Lyra lounged nearby, her violet skin seeming to pulse with its own inner light as she watched him work. You're adorable when you're being scientific, she teased, stretching languidly. Though I must say, most men prefer cuddling after such an intense ritual. Daniel looked up from his readings, fighting back a smile. Most men haven't just discovered that what they thought was ancient magic is actually quantum-level technology beyond anything humanity has achieved. And there you go again, trying to categorize everything. She moved closer, her movements fluid and graceful. Though I suppose I should tell you something that might really challenge your scientific worldview. Her tone made him pause. What is it? Lyra placed her hand over her abdomen, and Daniel noticed a subtle glow pulsing beneath her violet skin. It seems our ritual had some unexpected consequences. I'm with child. Daniel's instruments clattered to the floor. That's impossible. Our species aren't even remotely compatible. The genetic differences alone would make it completely impossible, she finished, clearly amused by his shock. And yet, here we are. The Ale mastered genetic manipulation millennia ago. Our bodies can adapt to compatible partners, regardless of species. But why? How? Daniel scrambled to retrieve his scanner, pointing it at her midsection. Always with the questions, she sighed, but allowed his examination. Our population was small, even at our height. We engineered ourselves to be able to reproduce with any sufficiently advanced species we encountered. It improved genetic diversity. The scanner's readings made Daniel's head spin. The embryonic tissue was somehow both human and ale, reorganizing itself at the molecular level. This is incredible. The implications for genetic science alone? Lyra caught his hand, pulling him closer. Daniel, darling, you're about to become a father to a child that's half-ancient alien priestess. Perhaps we could focus on that rather than the scientific implications? He blinked, reality finally catching up with him. I'm going to be a father? There's that emotional response I was waiting for, she laughed, but her eyes softened. Yes, you are. Assuming you're interested in raising a child who might have both your curiosity and my ability to manipulate quantum fields. Our child could manipulate quantum fields? Among other things, she said casually, creating a small dance of light between her fingers. Though I should warn you, ale pregnancies progress rather quickly compared to human ones. We'll have about 3 months. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, trying to process everything. 3 months? But I have so much more to learn about your civilization, about this temple, about... A deep rumble interrupted him, and the chamber's walls shifted, revealing panels of advanced technology hidden beneath the crystalline surface. About that, Lyra said, standing gracefully. There's something else you should know. This isn't exactly a temple. What do you mean? She waved her hand and holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing star maps and complex technical readouts. This is a seed ship, a vessel designed to terraform planets and establish new ale colonies. The Ice Titan you were so worried about? It's the core of our planetary engineering system. Daniel stared at the displays in awe. All this time I thought I was studying ruins. But this place is still active? Very active, Lyra confirmed, manipulating the holograms with practiced ease. And now that I'm awake and expecting, its primary protocols have reactivated. We have work to do, my dear scientist. Work? Her smile turned mischievous. Well, we can't raise our child on an ice planet, can we? It's time to wake this world up. She held out her hand to him. Ready for your next lesson in ale technology? Daniel took her hand, feeling the familiar surge of energy between them. Will this lesson involve any more life-changing surprises? Oh, darling, she pulled him close, her silver eyes sparkling with both affection and amusement. We're just getting started. The chamber hummed with power around them as ancient systems continued to awaken, responding to the presence of their priestess and her chosen partner. And the new life they had created together. The real adventure, it seemed, was only beginning. The seed ship's control chamber bloomed with light as Lyra guided Daniel through its systems. Holographic displays filled the air with cascading symbols and pulsing energy matrices. This vessel, Lyra explained, her violet skin reflecting the ethereal glow, was designed to seed life across the galaxy. Think of it as a combination of ark, laboratory, and terraforming engine. Daniel watched in amazement as she brought up a three-dimensional map of the ship. The temple they'd been in was merely the tip of a massive structure buried deep in the ice. How big is it? Big enough to reshape worlds, she smiled, resting a hand on her abdomen where their child grew. The Ice Titan you were so worried about? It's actually the primary terraforming core, capable of transforming entire planetary environments. Fascinating, Daniel murmured, trying to decipher the ale technical readouts. But where exactly do you plan to take it? Lyra's silver eyes lit up. There's a system, about 30 light years from here. Perfect conditions for establishing a new ale colony. Our child could grow up in a paradise of our making. Or, Daniel said carefully, we could go to Earth. I have a research facility there, access to medical care, A support system. Medical care? Lyra laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Darling, I'm carrying a hybrid child in a body that can manipulate quantum fields. Your Earth doctors would be about as helpful as stone tools. That's exactly my point, Daniel insisted, moving closer to her. We don't know what to expect with this pregnancy. Wouldn't it be safer to be somewhere with established infrastructure? Lyra's expression softened as she touched his face. Sweet, worried scientist, always trying to control variables. Her fingers traced his jaw, sending familiar tingles through his skin. But our child isn't a laboratory experiment. They're the future of both our peoples. The ship hummed around them, responding to their emotional resonance. Daniel noticed the ice walls beginning to shimmer with increased energy. Look, he said, catching her hand in his. I understand wanting to rebuild your civilization, but Earth isn't some primitive backwater. We could find a balance. A balance? Lyra's eyes flashed with amusement and challenge. Between what? Your world's crude attempts at understanding the universe and my people's mastery of it? She created a small galaxy of light between them. Our child will have powers your world isn't ready for. Then help us be ready, Daniel countered, stepping through her light display to pull her close. You could revolutionize Earth's science, help us advance. While being studied like a specimen, she pressed against him, her skin pulsing with emotion. Having our child treated like a laboratory curiosity? The ship's systems surged around them, responding to their heightened emotions. Ice crystals began to vibrate with harmonic frequencies. You know I wouldn't let that happen, Daniel said softly, feeling the familiar energy building between them. No? Lyra's smile turned sultry. Says the man who's been taking readings of me since the moment I awoke? That's different. Is it? She traced a glowing symbol on his chest. Face it, my dear scientist. You're torn between your human need to understand everything and the fact that some things transcend understanding. The chamber's crystals pulsed faster, matching their increasing emotional resonance. Deep below, the terraforming core began to stir. Maybe, Daniel admitted, pulling her closer, but you're torn too, between recreating your past and building something new. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, then she laughed. Clever man. When did you become so insightful? Probably around the time you rewrote my genetic code to make an impossible baby. She kissed him then, and the ship's systems flared with power. When they parted, her silver eyes were dancing with mischief and something deeper. I have a proposal, she said, waving her hand to bring up a new star chart. There's a system halfway between Earth and my chosen colony site, untouched but perfect for terraforming. She glanced at him sideways. We could make our own world, something that belongs to both our peoples. Daniel studied the charts, feeling the weight of the decision. Our own world? Think of it as a wedding present, she teased, then grew serious. A place where our child can be both human and ale, without having to choose. The terraforming core pulsed beneath them, as if approving the compromise. Daniel pulled up his own research data, comparing it with the ship's readings. It would take years to make a planet habitable, he pointed out. Lyra's laugh echoed through the chamber. Oh, my sweet, primitive scientist. You really need to stop thinking in human limitations. She gestured, and the ship's full capabilities displayed around them. With our combined resonance powering the systems, we could have a garden world in months. Daniel stared at the data, then at his impossible, beautiful alien wife. You're saying we could literally make our own paradise? Well, she purred, pressing against him as the ship hummed with power. What better way to raise a child who's going to rewrite the laws of physics? The choice crystallized in that moment as the ancient vessel responded to their shared emotion. Neither Earth nor an ale colony, but something new, something that belonged to both of them. One condition, he said, pulling her close. Oh, we document everything, for both our peoples. Lyra's smile lit up the chamber. Always the scientist. She kissed him again, and the ship's systems surged with their combined resonance. But I suppose that's why I chose you. I thought I chose you by touching the stasis field. Keep telling yourself that, darling, she laughed as the terraforming core began its startup sequence. Keep telling yourself that. The seed ship emerged from hyperspace near the coordinates Lyra had designated as an ancient Ale colony site. What they found made both of them stare in amazement. "That's impossible," Lyra whispered, her violet skin pulsing with excitement. "The colony beacon is active. There are thousands of energy signatures." Daniel adjusted their sensors, his scientific curiosity fully engaged. "It looks like a thriving civilization down there, but I thought you were the only one who got awakened by a charming, if overly analytical, scientist," Lyra teased, but her silver eyes were wide with wonder. "Apparently, I wasn't the only one who found a compatible match." As they descended through the atmosphere, they saw a landscape that defied imagination. Crystal spires rose from lush gardens, their architecture distinctly Ale, but somehow evolved. And moving among them were people, some violet-skinned like Lyra, others in a rainbow of different species. "Look," Daniel pointed to a group of children playing near one of the structures. "Those kids, they're hybrids, just like our little one will be," Lyra said softly, touching her growing abdomen. "It seems the Ale preservation protocol worked better than we imagined." They landed their ship in what appeared to be a designated area for new arrivals. As they emerged, they were greeted by a sight that made Daniel do a double take. A human man, probably in his 50s, walking hand in hand with a violet-skinned Ale woman who could have been Lyra's sister. "Welcome, travelers," the man called out in perfect standard. "I'm Thomas Chen, former xenoarchaeologist from Earth, and this is my wife, Sira." "Another scientist?" Lyra laughed, squeezing Daniel's hand. "We do seem to have a type, don't we?" Sira smiled, her silver eyes twinkling. "The curious ones always find us. Though I must say, sister, you've chosen well. His resonance patterns are quite strong. You should have seen him trying to analyze everything instead of completing the bonding ritual," Lyra said with fond exasperation. Thomas laughed. "Oh, that sounds familiar. I spent 3 days trying to document the stasis pod's quantum mechanics before Sira finally got through to me." "Only 3 days?" Daniel raised an eyebrow at Lyra. "You didn't give me nearly that long to study things." "Because, my dear scientist," she purred, "I could tell you needed a more hands-on approach to research." As they walked through the colony, Thomas and Sira explained how over the past decade, more and more awakened Ale had found their way here with their chosen partners. The children they saw were a new generation, hybrid offspring carrying both the advanced abilities of the Ale and the diverse traits of their other parents. "It's fascinating," Daniel marveled, watching a young girl with violet skin and distinctive Centaurian markings manipulate quantum fields to create a playground of light. The genetic compatibility, the power transmission. "Still trying to quantify everything?" Lyra teased, but her eyes were soft with affection. "Even after all we've experienced?" "Well," he pulled her close, feeling the familiar surge of energy between them. "Some mysteries are worth studying in detail." "Oh!" Her silver eyes danced with mischief. "And what conclusions has your research drawn so far?" "That sometimes the most incredible discoveries happen when you stop trying to explain them and just—" He kissed her, making the nearby quantum fields flutter with their resonance. "Experience them." Sira laughed, leaning against Thomas. "Sister, I think your scientist might be more advanced than mine was at this stage. It took Thomas at least a year to reach that conclusion." "Hey," Thomas protested good-naturedly. "I was documenting a completely unknown civilization." "You were documenting your own marriage, dear," Sira corrected with a fond smile. As they continued their tour, Daniel and Lyra learned more about this thriving community of impossible unions. Each couple had their own story of discovery, confusion, and eventual understanding. The colony had become a haven for these unique families, where both the ancient wisdom of the Ale and the diverse cultures of their partners could flourish together. "So," Lyra said later, as they stood watching 3 moons rise over the Crystal City, "still want to try building our own world? Or should we consider joining this one?" Daniel wrapped his arms around her, feeling their child's quantum signature pulse gently between them. "Why not both? We could help expand this colony, use our ship's terraforming capabilities to create more habitable worlds, build bridges between all our peoples." She turned in his arms, her violet skin glowing in the moonlight. My brilliant, ambitious scientist. Always thinking bigger. I learn from the best, he smiled, pulling her closer, though I'm still documenting everything. Of course you are, she laughed, creating a dance of light between them. But perhaps we could conduct some additional research first. The quantum fields around them shimmered with their combined resonance as they kissed. Their impossible love story, just one of many in this sanctuary of ancient magic and modern science, where the boundaries between species dissolved in the face of something far more powerful, understanding. As the triple moons cast their ethereal light over the crystal city, Daniel and Lyra sat in one of the colony's suspended gardens. Below them, the nighttime festivities of the hybrid community created a tapestry of lights and laughter. You know, Daniel said, watching a group of children practicing quantum manipulation under the guidance of an AL teacher. This place is everything we were hoping to build, already realized. Lyra leaned against him, her violet skin glowing softly in the moonlight. Having second thoughts about our grand terraforming adventure? Actually, yes. He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. Why start from scratch when we could be part of something already amazing? Our child would have friends like them, teachers who understand both heritage. But, Lyra prompted, sensing his hesitation. Her silver eyes sparkled with knowing amusement. But I really, really miss coffee, he admitted with a sheepish grin. And I'd love to see my colleagues' faces when I introduce them to my incredibly beautiful, quantum-manipulating alien wife. Lyra laughed, the sound making nearby crystal formations resonate harmoniously. Oh, so now I'm your trophy wife to show off. Well, he pulled her closer, feeling the familiar tingle of their quantum resonance. You have to admit, you do enjoy making an impression. Remember how you first woke up? As I recall, she traced a glowing pattern on his chest. You were the one who couldn't take his eyes off me in the stasis crystal. Can you blame me? It's not every day a man finds his future wife frozen in ice. Future wife? She raised an elegant eyebrow. I seem to remember someone insisting the ritual was an accident. Daniel laughed, pulling her into his lap. Best accident of my life. Smooth talker, she purred, but her eyes softened. So, Earth? You really want to visit your world? Just for a visit, he assured her. I want to show you everything. Coffee shops, universities, museums. He paused, grinning. Watch you completely upend every physics department's understanding of quantum mechanics. Tempting, she mused, creating a small galaxy of light between them. Though I should warn you, pregnant AL women can be quite demanding about their cravings. Are you prepared to search every coffee shop on Earth for the perfect blend? For you, he kissed her softly, making the quantum fields around them dance. I'll search every coffee shop in the galaxy. Careful with those promises, my dear scientist, she whispered against his lips. I might hold you to them. I'm counting on it. Their conversation was interrupted by a small explosion of light nearby. One of the hybrid children had successfully created their first quantum construct. The proud parents, another human AL couple, were celebrating with tears of joy. That'll be us soon, Lyra said softly, watching the family. Terrifying thought, Daniel admitted. A child with your powers and my curiosity? The universe better watch out. Oh, Lyra's eyes danced with mischief. Worried our little one might take after their mother too much? Actually, he pulled her closer. I'm hoping they do. Though maybe with slightly less enjoyment in tormenting scientists. Never, she declared, creating a crown of light above his head. Teasing brilliant but oblivious researchers is an ancient and honored AL tradition. I fully intend to pass it on. As they laughed together, their quantum resonance making the garden's crystals sing, Daniel knew they'd made the right choice. This place, this community, was exactly what they needed. A perfect blend of both their worlds. So, Lyra said after a moment, when do we leave for Earth? I'm quite curious to taste this coffee that you rank alongside quantum manipulation in terms of wonders. Soon, he promised. Though maybe we should work on explaining to my colleagues how I went from studying ancient ruins to having an alien wife and baby on the way. Oh, that's simple, she grinned wickedly. Just tell them you fell in love with your research subject. The gardens echoed with their laughter. their joy adding another harmony to the symphony of impossible loves and hybrid families that made this colony unique in all the galaxy. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through space, love, and discovery with Daniel and Lyra. Their story is more than just a tale of romance between a scientist and an ancient priestess. It's about breaking boundaries, challenging assumptions, and finding wonder in the unexpected. What do you think about their unique love story? Did you enjoy how science and magic intertwine through their relationship? Perhaps you smiled at Daniel's persistent scientific curiosity or Lyra's playful teasing. Their journey from an icy temple to a thriving community of impossible loves raises so many possibilities. Would you like to know what happens next? There are still many stories to tell. Daniel and Lyra's visit to Earth, the birth of their hybrid child, their adventures helping other couples in the colony, the expansion of their unique civilization, the reaction of Earth's scientific community to proof of advanced alien life. Your thoughts and feedback could help shape their continuing story. What aspects of their world would you like to explore further? What questions do you still have about the Ale civilization and its technology? How do you imagine their future unfolding? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know if you'd like to hear more about this universe where love transcends species and science meets magic. After all, somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, there might be more stasis crystals waiting to be discovered, more impossible loves waiting to bloom. The story of Daniel and Lyra might be paused for now, but like the quantum fields they manipulate, it's full of infinite possibilities. Should we explore them together? What do you think?